This young man succeeded in going back in time after everything was destroyed. Not only that, but he also obtained a method that allows him to steal all the treasures of the gods. What will he do with this incredible power? And will he be able to fix the situation? This is what we will discover in our story. The greed demon led the demon hordes and established the 10,000 Demons Temple by extracting gold from the mountains of hell. The 10,000 Demons Temple was originally located on the top floor of the tower, but after the Heavenly Demonic War, all remnants of the demonic forces, including the temple, were moved from the tower's peak. Eventually, all demonic powers were eradicated, but the tower didn't enjoy peace for long as it was attacked by an unknown enemy, later called the Outsider. This enemy managed to expel the constellations with an immense power far beyond anything they had ever known. In the end, even the players who had lost their powers were eradicated. In this reality, where all players were destroyed, the tower faced a dire situation. The scene shifts to our hero, Jeong, who couldn't believe that the 10,000 Demons Temple had been moved to the 92nd floor. But he felt grateful for finding it, as it might give them a chance to turn the tide. Jeong was searching for something specific hidden in the temple, the Vault of Greed. This vault could allow him to turn back time and change the course of events. Indeed, Jeong arrives at the temple, and upon entering, a window appears telling him he is the first human to reach this place. He feels relieved that he has finally reached his goal. The temple was grand and radiated a yellow glow due to the vast amounts of gold filling it. Suddenly, the walls begin to shake, and Jeong realizes something has pinpointed his location. Knowing he must complete his mission quickly, he activates a unique skill called Journey's Guide, the strongest exploration and search skill among all skills. Without this skill, it would have been impossible for Jeong to find the 10,000 Demons Temple, or survive this long. After activating the skill, a golden indicator appears, and Jeong asks it to lead him to the Vault of Greed. Jeong quickly follows the indicator, but to his surprise, he reaches a dead end. The indicator stops at a candelabra hanging on the wall, and Jeong wonders if he should touch it. Indeed, he pulls the candelabra from the wall and is surprised when a secret door opens, leading to a large room. Jeong descends a staircase and continues until he reaches a gate he believes to be the entrance to the Vault of Greed. He pulls out a key and smiles, saying he never imagined he would thank someone named Felchus. Just remembering what happened with Felchus makes him feel annoyed. In a flashback, we see the key in Jeong's possession being thrown to the ground, and Jeong sitting in front of Felchus, who laughs and tells him that his share is that key because they don't have the money to pay him. Jeong yells, saying this was not the agreement, and if things continue like this, he won't continue with them. Felchus responds by saying that quitting the guild would end his future as an adventurer, and asks him with a sly look if he's ready for that. The scene returns to the present, where Jeong remembers that at the time, he didn't know the key's importance. He uses it to unlock the gate in front of him, and at that moment, the key's golden feature activates, transforming into the golden key of greed, used to open the Vault of Greed. Jeong is shocked when he sees the immense quantity of treasures before him. He moves between the astonishing treasures, the likes of which he had never seen in his life. A terrifying cursed sword, the Heavenly Demon's Martial Arts Manual, an ancient magic book for completing the forgotten 8th circle, and even the heart of a dragon. He couldn't comprehend how all these treasures had been gathered in one place. At that moment, he feels the increasing tremors in the ground and realizes that the creature chasing him is getting closer. For this reason, he wastes no time and activates the Journey's Guide skill again. The golden indicator appears before him, and Jeong asks it to lead him to the treasure he seeks. The arrow stops at a mountain of gold coins, and Jeong begins to move them aside, wondering if the treasure he's searching for is beneath them. Indeed, he finally finds what he was looking for, the Hourglass of Chronos. This hourglass, crafted by the ruler of time, Kronos, holds the power to reverse time. Jeong thinks about how he could return to the past to stop the demonic war, climb the tower, and confront the outsider, potentially preventing the current catastrophe the tower is facing. Jeong flips the Hourglass of Chronos, and it emits a powerful aura as it begins to activate. A window appears, informing him that time within the tower will reverse to the moment of the beginning, and that this process will take 10 minutes. Jeong decides that after returning to the past, he will do everything in his power to prevent the current disaster from occurring. At that moment, the ground shakes more violently, and several tendrils pierce through the ceiling, attacking Jeong. He dodges them quickly, feeling a surge of anger for being discovered at such a critical moment. The outsider bursts into the room, revealing its form, resembling an octopus with snake-like tentacles. It attacks Jeong again, but Jeong manages to evade the assault. He's shocked when he notices something in front of him. He remembers that this place holds not only treasures, but also the weapons of the rulers. Jeong grabs Zeus's thunder spear and decides to make the most of the remaining time before the time reversal. He hurls the spear at the outsider, who gets struck by an enormous electric shock, screaming in agony. However, the outsider manages to withstand the attack and strikes at Jeong again. Jeong grows frustrated as he realizes his opponent is stronger than he anticipated. In that moment, Jeong sees a sword engulfed in a powerful fiery aura. He wonders if it could be Leviathan, the sword of destruction. He quickly grabs it, thinking that the power of the ruler's weapons should definitely be enough, especially since this sword was specifically crafted to burn the world. Jeong charges at the outsider at incredible speed, while the latter launches its tendrils to stop him. Jeong dodges the tendrils and gets closer, delivering a direct blow that turns the outsider into a blazing mass of fire. Jeong knew that the outsider was covered by an outer layer protecting its true body. He looks closely and finally discovers the true form of the outsider. Surprised to find that it resembles a boar, Jeong grows tense as he realizes that the energy of Leviathan has run out, and the outsider viciously attacks him. At that moment, he spots beside him Bryonak, the radiant spear, the weapon of the ruler of light, known for its ability to pierce through anything. Jeong quickly grabs the spear and prepares to hurl it at the outsider, wondering if this attack will finally end the fight. The spear shoots out at incredible speed, piercing through the outsider's body completely. A bright explosion occurs upon impact, blinding Jeong momentarily. As the chaos fades, Jeong stands in awe of the spear's power. Suddenly, a congratulatory window appears in front of him, informing him that he is the first player to successfully defeat an outsider. At the same moment, the countdown for Kronos' hourglass ends, and it begins to activate. The Vault of Greed starts to collapse, and another window appears, notifying Jeong that since he is the only player inside the vault and holds the golden key, he will be recognized as the new owner of the Vault of Greed. Additionally, for defeating the outsider Mao, the glutton, he is granted the authority of gluttony. Jeong is astonished, not fully understanding what this authority entails. At the same time, Kronos' hourglass completes its setup, and all of Jeong's skills are erased, along with resetting all the experience he had gained throughout his journey in the tower. Then, Jeong is sent back in time to the moment the tutorial began. The scene shifts to a forest, where a group of people is suddenly transported to this location. They are bewildered, questioning where they have been taken. At this moment, a window appears before each of them, welcoming them to the tutorial. Everyone is confused, and no one knows what's happening. The only person who doesn't seem surprised is our hero, Jeong, who wonders if he has truly succeeded in returning to the past. One of the people demands that someone explain what's happening, and another person responds that they are all in the same situation and no one knows anything. Jeong observes that people are just as panicked as they were the first time, and he decides to keep his distance from them. Suddenly, someone grabs him by the arm, asking if he knows anything about what's going on, or if they are there because of some crime they committed. When Jeong looks at the man, he remembers that this person was brutally killed during the previous tutorial, his throat having been slashed. Jeong calmly tells the man to stay composed, but the man is too agitated and screams, asking how he's supposed to be calm in such a situation. The man clutches his head, wondering if what's happening is some kind of prank or a hidden camera show. Jeong knows that no matter what he says now, no one will listen to him, and things will only settle down once the wave begins. At that moment, a window appears before everyone, announcing the start of the first chapter of the tutorial, titled Adaptation, with a countdown showing that there are only 4 minutes and 21 seconds before the first monster wave begins. Everyone is confused and doesn't understand what a monster wave means. Meanwhile, Jeong checks his status window and notices that everything appears exactly as it did the first time, except now he has 2 new skills, Authority of Greed and Authority of Gluttony, though he doesn't yet know what they are. He recalls the windows that appeared during the collapse of the Vault of Greed and wonders if he can use these powers. Jeong tries activating the Authority of Greed, and suddenly a treasure chest appears in his hand. He is surprised when the chest opens automatically, and the system informs him that the Vault of Greed has been unlocked. From it, he obtains Dragon's Fire Breath and Thor's Hammer, along with martial arts techniques from the Heavenly Master. Jeong becomes excited, realizing that with this authority, he can definitely use its power to gain the strength needed to face the outsiders. At that moment, the first chapter of the tutorial begins, and the first wave of monsters appears. Players are instructed to defeat these monsters to prove their strength. The ground suddenly begins to tremble, and the players become tense, not knowing what to do. The players are shocked when they see a pack of wolves approaching, wondering if these are the monster wave they were warned about. In an instant, the wolves charge at the players, attacking them viciously. The players panic and scream at the top of their lungs as they try to flee, but they run into another group of wolves, becoming trapped from all sides. They frantically ask what they should do and whether they're about to die in this situation. Jeong steps in at that moment, telling them that if they want to survive, they need to fight. One of them shouts at him, asking if Jeong doesn't understand the dangerous situation they're in and how they can fight without weapons. The person is surprised when another individual steps forward and asks Jeong if he has a plan. This person is named Kang, a towering figure so tall that the person who was shouting at Jeong is shocked when he looks up at him. Jeong adjusts his clothes and replies that it's simple. They just need to focus on defense while he handles the monsters. Kang responds that he doesn't have a problem with that, but doesn't understand how Jeong plans to deal with all the monsters by himself. Jeong opens the Vault of Greed and retrieves the 10 Paths of Martial Arts book, which contains a simple leg technique that enhances the efficiency of his strikes. Jeong activates the book to learn the technique and tests his newfound power. A wolf charges at him, and Jeong uses the 10 Paths of Martial Arts to deliver a powerful kick, instantly killing it. Afterward, 3 more enraged wolves rush at him, but Jeong doesn't wait for their attack. Instead, he charges toward them at incredible speed, spins in the air, and lands a powerful kick to the ground, shattering it and taking out several wolves in the process. Everyone is astonished by what Jeong did, unable to believe how he fought the wolves without any weapons. Even Kang is surprised when he sees Jeong's strength, confirming his suspicions that Jeong is powerful, though he didn't expect him to defeat the wolves so easily. Kang feels something strange inside him, a burning sensation, and wonders what it could be. At that moment, a wolf attacks him, but the wolf is shocked when its fangs can't pierce Kang's body. Kang is visibly annoyed by the wolf interrupting his thoughts. He grabs the wolf by its head and slams it into the ground with immense force, leaving the 2 people standing beside him in shock. They wonder if they could do something similar. One of them calls out, asking if anyone has a weapon they can use to fight the wolves. Meanwhile, Kang focuses on Jeong as he fights the wolves. He notices that Jeong's strength doesn't just come from his physical power, but also from his unique fighting style. Kang realizes that Jeong fights in a completely different manner than he does. Clenching his fists with a strong desire to fight alongside someone like Jeong, Kang feels a deep urge to test himself. After a while, Jeong starts feeling exhausted after taking down a large number of wolves and notices that the wave is nearing its end. He realizes that his body is now much weaker than it was in the previous phase, and that he needs to find a solution to this problem. But suddenly, he is hit with a strange sensation and begins to wonder about its source. Jeong briefly senses an overwhelming presence, and a window appears, informing him that the Bent Raven constellation is watching him. Jeong tenses up when he realizes he has attracted the attention of a constellation, especially the Bent Raven, the original owner of the Vault of Greed. He looks up at the sky, unable to believe that the greed demon is observing him, and wonders if it noticed his use of the vault's power. He feels a growing fear, knowing that if the Bent Raven discovered him using elements from the vault without permission, it wouldn't remain silent. Jeong starts considering what he should do next, wondering if he needs to hide his power. He understands that if the Bent Raven discovers he's been using its power without approval, he could be punished immediately. At that moment, another window appears, informing Jeong that the Bent Raven noticed traces of temporal distortion around him, and nodded as if recalling the existence of the hourglass. Jeong is shocked by this message and grows even more anxious. However, another window appears, telling him that the Bent Raven smiled. The situation returns to normal, and Jeong finds himself in disbelief that the Bent Raven didn't take any action against him, despite knowing he had used Kronos' hourglass. He wonders if the Bent Raven had anticipated what had happened, and is puzzled by its lack of reaction. Jeong feels that this gesture from the Bent Raven could be a tacit approval, causing him to smile as he tells himself that if this is the case, he should use this power in the best way possible. He decides to check the authority of gluttony. the power he gained after defeating Mao, the glutton. Jeong tries activating the authority, but a window appears, telling him he must first select a target. He looks around and sees nothing but the corpses of the wolves he had killed. Wondering if the authority would work on the dead, he extends his hand toward one of the wolf corpses and tries activating the authority again. Sharp tendrils emerge from his hand, resembling those possessed by the outsider, and begin consuming the bodies of the slain wolves. A window appears, informing him that he successfully consumed a gray wolf, and as a result, his strength increased by 1 point and his agility by 2 points. Jeong is stunned when he realizes that he can increase his stats simply by consuming corpses. Smiling, he says that if he can freely use this authority, he could quickly maximize his physical strength. However, his smile fades as a thought crosses his mind. If what happened with the greed demon could happen again, the gluttony demons might also notice him after using their power. Jeong begins to regret his hasty use of the authority of gluttony without considering the potential risks. He wonders if he made a mistake by using this power too early, exposing himself to the surveillance and potential dangers posed by greater forces. Indeed, a notification window appears, informing Jeong that the hungry prince Constellation has stopped chewing on a wolf leg and looks astonished. Kang, upon seeing this notification, feels uneasy and gulps, thinking he narrowly escaped the greed demon by luck, but it's hard to believe he'll get away unscathed this time as well. However, he's surprised when the system informs him that the hungry prince opened his mouth as if to say something, but then continued chewing his food as usual. Jeong couldn't believe that a demon from the evil faction, one of the strongest demons, had lost focus over a bit of meat. He wonders if the prince is truly that hungry and smiles, thinking that if this is the case, he might be able to use it to his advantage. Jeong activates the authority of gluttony once again, saying that if the hungry prince is that desperate to eat, he'll give him what he wants. The tendrils from Jeong's hand extend again, devouring the remaining wolf corpses in the area. Another notification window appears, telling him that the hungry prince is pleased with the unexpected feast, making Jeong smile and relax, knowing his plan worked as expected. This time, he gains another boost in strength and agility from consuming the corpses, though the increase is smaller than the first time. Jeong is satisfied, as he wasn't aiming to raise his stats in this moment. Looking up toward the sky, Jeong asks the hungry prince if he's had enough, and the system replies that the prince's mouth is watering as he says what he ate was just an appetizer. Jeong smirks and says, "That's exactly what I'd expect from a gluttony demon." After some time, the players finally manage to defeat all the monsters. Everyone feels a sense of joy and begins to cheer in celebration. The system appears to inform them that they have successfully cleared the first wave of the first chapter of the tutorial, and each player is rewarded with 50 points. Jeong watches the situation unfold with relief, seeing that the first wave ended without any casualties among the players. He recalls that in his previous life, there were losses during this wave, and wonders if the difference this time was that he personally defeated more than half of the monsters. At that moment, the system begins calculating individual contributions. Jeong ranks first with 220 points, followed by Kang with 80 points in second place, and a girl named Yu comes in third with 40 points. Jeong reflects, thinking that earning 220 points makes sense. In the tutorial, points are earned based on individual contributions, and the higher the points and ranking, the better the rewards for completing the tutorial, as well as increasing a player's chances of being chosen by a constellation. With this in mind, Jeong sets his goal, to always claim the top rank. Jeong looks at the other players around him and realizes that, although they successfully survived the first wave, he has identified a crucial need, a weapon. Even with access to the Vault of Greed, his low stats still pose a significant challenge. He needs a weapon to compensate for this weakness. However, the problem is that there are no decent weapons in the immediate area. Determined, Jeong decides to venture into the forest to increase his stats and search for something useful. As he enters the forest, he thinks that by boosting his stats, he'll be able to unlock better treasures from the Vault of Greed. At that moment, Jeong hears someone calling his name and turns around. A girl approaches him, asking about his destination. Jeong wonders who she is, feeling that her voice is familiar. He is surprised when she gets closer, and he recognizes her as Yu, known as the Whirlwind in his previous life. While Jeong doesn't remember everyone from this place, Yu is unforgettable. She, along with Kang, was one of the top-ranked individuals in the tower, and even in the higher levels she was well known. Yu approaches Jeong and asks where he's going alone. Jeong feels frustrated because every minute in the tutorial is precious, and he doesn't have the luxury of wasting time dealing with people right now. He replies that he prefers exploring the area rather than standing around aimlessly. Yu tells him that instead of wasting time exploring, it would be better to gather everyone and discuss what they will do for the second wave. Jeong asks if that will make a difference, and she responds that at the very least, it would help reduce the tension among the others. Jeong grows annoyed because he doesn't have time for such discussions and can't explain all the details to her. He tells her that he's not interested in reducing tension, especially since everyone will start panicking as soon as the monsters reappear. Yu yells, saying that even if what he says is true, they don't know when the monsters will show up again, and wandering off alone could be dangerous. At that moment, both of them are surprised when a window appears, showing them the remaining time before the second wave, 2 hours and 57 minutes. Jeong turns his back to Yu, telling her to return to the others and pay attention to the system messages. He adds that during this time, she can discuss or do whatever she wants. Before leaving, he advises her to look for a sturdy branch or something similar that can be used as a weapon. After spending some time deeper in the forest, Jeong encounters a brown wolf and kills it, surrounded by the corpses of many wolves he had already slain. He thinks this is the perfect moment to increase his stats. Using the authority of gluttony, he begins devouring the wolf corpses. However, after consuming a significant number of brown wolves, the system shows him a window, informing him that he can no longer gain stats from them. Another window appears, telling him that the hungry prince has grown tired of eating this kind of meat. Jeong smiles and says, "That's exactly what I'd expect from a gluttony demon." He then tells the hungry prince to wait a moment while he searches for something more fitting to his tastes. Jeong grabs a tree branch and decides to test something. Activating the authority of greed, he pulls the Chosen One's sword from the Vault of Greed. He notices that the treasures he draws from the vault appear as pure energy, with no physical form. He suspects that these treasures have lost their physical manifestation, though their energy remains intact. Jeong feels a bit frustrated by this, but he doesn't consider it a major issue. He believes all he needs to do is merge the treasure's energy into a suitable object. He tries merging the Chosen One's sword into the tree branch he's holding, but is shocked when he feels intense heat radiating from the branch, which then evaporates in his hand, causing the fusion to fail. Jeong realizes that the branch couldn't withstand the sword's energy, which is why it disintegrated. He starts to worry when he deduces that the same thing could happen to him. Fortunately, the only item he had used on himself was a simple martial arts technique, which his body managed to adapt to. However, had he used something stronger, like the dragon's fire breath, he might have turned to ash, just like the branch. Jeong decides to test using a useless treasure on one of the brown wolves, but the process fails, making him realize that he can't use authority of greed treasures on anyone other than himself. Once he understands these limitations, he concludes that he won't be able to utilize many of the treasures, which leads him to the only solution, increasing his personal abilities so that he can handle more powerful treasures in the future. Although this realization frustrates him, Jeong decides to focus on finding a weapon first. After a while of searching with no luck, he grows increasingly irritated at his inability to find anything useful. At that moment, an idea strikes him, and he decides to test it. He opens the Vault of Greed and retrieves something called Hyena's Nose. After merging it with his body, Jeong begins to smell a specific scent and quickly follows it, realizing that it's the smell of rust. This convinces him that he's close to finding something valuable. Just then, a system message appears, informing Jeong that the hungry prince is starting to complain, wanting to eat soon. Jeong feels exasperated, as it feels more like he's taking care of a pig than dealing with a constellation. Jeong continues running until he becomes exhausted and pauses to catch his breath, certain that he's close to the source of the scent. But suddenly, he picks up another smell. He turns around to see a strange beast approaching him. As the creature comes into full view, Jeong realizes it's a gray wolf. He understands that the wolf must have tracked him by scent, just as he was doing. Jeong thinks to himself that in his previous life, he would have run away from such situations, but this time is different. He activates his power and prepares for battle. The wolf lunges at him with its mouth open, but Jeong dodges the attack and quickly retreats. He notices that the wolf isn't just larger than the average gray wolves. It's also faster, meaning it's no ordinary monster. Jeong confirms this when he feels a small wound on his neck. Despite believing he had dodged the attack completely, he realizes that the wolf was aiming to end his life with a single strike by targeting a vital point. Jeong feels grateful for the 10 steps technique he learned. Without it, his fate could have been much worse. The wolf charges at him again, and Jeong manages to dodge, circling around the beast and delivering a powerful kick. However, Jeong is surprised when the attack doesn't have the impact he expected. He quickly retreats, feeling his leg tremble as if it had struck something solid. He wonders if this is due to his low stats. Jeong was certain that his kick had struck the wolf's belly, but he couldn't understand how its stomach could be so hard. The wolf continued its relentless attack, and Jeong found himself struggling to handle the powerful beast. He tried to think of a solution, telling himself that there must be a way to defeat the wolf. His heart sank when 2 more gray wolves appeared, joining the fight. Feeling tense, Jeong began to retreat slowly, realizing that with the increased pace of attacks, escaping might be impossible. However, just then, he spotted the rusty sword he had been searching for lying next to him. He quickly grabbed the sword as the gray wolves charged at him. Despite its worn appearance, Jeong felt confident as he wielded the blade, knowing that its sharpness remained intact. He slashed at one of the wolves, easily cutting it down. Smiling, Jeong thought to himself that this weapon was exactly what he needed at this stage. Next, he turned his attention to the second gray wolf and dispatched it with similar ease. At that moment, a message from the system appeared, informing him that the bent raven was watching him with amazement. Jeong felt a rush of excitement after obtaining the weapon he had sought, and he wasn't about to back down now. He decided to finish the battle before the second wave of monsters could begin. He activated the Vault of Greed and retrieved the Hamel family swordsmanship, a simple yet effective technique passed down through the family's generations. Jeong activated the technique within himself and looked at the remaining gray wolf, declaring that things were about to change from now on. The wolf let out a fierce roar and charged at him. Jeong braced himself, gripping the sword tightly in preparation for the clash. The wolf's powerful jaws clamped down on the blade, but Jeong seized the opportunity to unleash a series of rapid strikes against the beast, leaving deep wounds that caused blood to spill. Jeong felt exhilarated by the effectiveness of the swordsmanship technique and remarked that this was what he expected from one of the finest sword techniques in the Empire. With newfound speed and confidence, Jeong rushed toward the wolf to finish it off. As the wolf opened its mouth to strike, Jeong saw his chance and plunged the sword deep into its throat, ending the battle and slaying the creature. The system notified him that he had defeated the Grey Wolf, the leader of the wolf forest. Jeong smiled as his level increased, gaining 500 individual contribution points, along with the Grey Wolf's pelt as a reward. Aside from obtaining the weapon, Jeong had another goal: increasing his contribution points. He knew that contribution points could be earned in multiple ways. The first was by participating in battles and eliminating monsters in the tutorial. The second method was to hunt down monsters separately and defeat them. And the third, though not possible now, was to defeat other players. Jeong was aware that toward the end of the tutorial, many players would begin fighting one another, as it provided a huge opportunity to gain points. In that moment, Jeong activated the authority of gluttony on the Grey Wolf's corpse. After consuming it, he gained 3 points in strength, 5 points in agility, and 2 points in health. Jeong was thrilled with the boost in stats he received after defeating the wolf leader. A window appeared, informing him that the hungry prince was satisfied with the taste of the meat and wanted Jeong to maintain this level of quality at all times. Jeong decides to inspect the items he obtained before returning to the group. He starts with the Chosen One's sword and discovers that it has 2 special abilities. The first is Poison, which slows down the healing of wounds caused by the sword, and the second is Hero's Mark, which increases attack power by 10% against monsters. Next, Jeong examines the Grey Wolf pelt, which also has special abilities. The first is Authority, which grants the wearer strong charisma in front of allies and strikes fear into the hearts of enemies, and the second is Wind's Blessing, which increases movement speed by 5%. Both the sword and the pelt are rated D-, but Jeong sees potential in the pelt's abilities and decides that he'll work to upgrade it to D+ in the future. At that moment, a message from the system appears, informing him that the bent raven is eyeing his weapon, commenting that it's not too bad. Jeong smirks and thinks to himself that this is exactly what he'd expect from the greed demon, who can't ignore anything that piques its interest. Jeong wonders how much time is left before the second wave begins and discovers he has only 12 minutes. He quickly puts on the wolf pelt and starts moving, but he still doesn't make it back in time. The second wave begins while he's still in the forest. He feels mildly annoyed, knowing that he promised Yu he would return before the wave started, but he brushes it off, thinking it's not important enough to concern him. He decides that this is a good chance to see how the others handle themselves, telling himself that he doesn't plan to surround himself with unreliable people who would only become a burden. When he finally arrives at the battlefield, Jeong notices that the players are surprised because this wave consists of wild boars. He hears one player yelling at his friend, who is fleeing, but the friend isn't listening and says he can't take it anymore. Meanwhile, Kang is locked in combat with one of the boars, and Yu lands a strong blow on another. Jeong observes one of the players, a man who used to be a powerful corporate manager, shouting at a younger player who was once his employee, demanding that he protect him. The older man kicks the younger one and threatens him with job loss if he doesn't fight properly. Jeong watches this unfold and mutters to himself that there are always despicable people like this. He looks at the other players and notices that many of them are fighting better than he expected, especially Kang and Yu, despite not having decent gear, which he attributes to their innate strength. At that moment, Jeong decides to step in. Yu, visibly exhausted, is gasping for breath. She feels grateful for the branch Jeong had given her, thinking that without it, she would likely be dead by now. She mutters to herself that these boars are much stronger than the wolves they faced before. While dodging an attack from one of the boars, Yu gets injured in her leg and starts bleeding. In that moment, she recalls Jeong's last words before he left for the forest. Though she doesn't understand why she's remembering them now, the boar charges at her with incredible speed, and Yu, feeling panicked, doesn't know what to do. In this critical moment, she realizes that her physical abilities have deteriorated due to exhaustion and injury. She doesn't have the time or strength to defend herself against the advancing threat. She forces herself to stand, trying to brace for the boar's charge, though she's unsure if she can survive the attack. Just as the boar is about to strike, everyone is shocked as the beast is suddenly sliced clean in half. Jeong appears, having killed the boar with a single slash from his sword. He stands confidently, placing his foot on the boar's carcass, exuding a commanding presence. Yu was about to say something, but Jeong interrupted her, pointing his sword toward a group of wild boars charging toward them. He told her they needed to deal with them first. Yu tensed up as she glanced in the direction Jeong indicated and saw 3 boars approaching rapidly. Jeong opened the Vault of Greed and retrieved an item called Orc Tendons, which enhanced strength and flexibility. He infused the tendons into his body, unsure if he could withstand them. However, he knew he would only find out by trying. He was able to dodge an attack from one of the boars in an instant and delivered a powerful slash with his sword, easily taking it down. Gripping his sword tightly, Jeong prepared to face the 2 remaining boars. He delivered a strong blow to each of them, cutting them in half with ease. Both Yu and Kang were astonished at how Jeong had effortlessly defeated the 3 boars. Jeong smiled, feeling his strength increase and his control over it improve thanks to the orc tendons. At that moment, someone placed a hand on Jeong's shoulder. It was the arrogant manager who had been shouting at the others earlier. The manager praised Jeong for fighting well, noting that he was on a completely different level from the useless players. He then asked Jeong if he would agree to become his personal bodyguard, proudly mentioning that he was the owner of Ton Ko. He promised to reward Jeong handsomely if he agreed. Jeong wasn't particularly interested in what the manager had to say, but the man continued to talk, offering Jeong the position of department head in his company if he could protect him. Smiling, Jeong said the offer sounded amazing. The manager, thinking Jeong was about to agree, grinned in return, only to be shocked when Jeong said he was actually looking for a shield he could use. The manager became nervous and asked what Jeong meant. Suddenly, Jeong kicked him to the ground. The manager screamed and insulted Jeong, accusing him of being crazy, but he quickly fell silent when he heard a loud noise from behind. Turning around, the manager was horrified to see a group of wild boars charging at him at full speed. He screamed in terror, but Jeong completely ignored him, letting the boars take care of him. For a moment, silence filled the area as everyone stood in shock at what had just happened. Meanwhile, the bent raven watched the scene unfold with a sly smile, while the hungry prince screamed, wanting a delicious meal that didn't include the arrogant manager who had just been killed. After some time, the players finally managed to eliminate all the remaining monsters. The system congratulated them on their success, awarding each of them an additional 50 points. Everyone was relieved that the second wave had finally ended. The system began calculating individual contributions, and as usual, Jeong took first place with a total of 1,080 points. Kang came in second with 180 points, while Yu placed third with 100 points. Jeong used the authority of gluttony on the boar carcasses, increasing his strength by 1 point and his vitality by 2 points. The hungry prince devoured the boars happily, eagerly awaiting more. Jeong decided to keep one of the boar carcasses for later consumption, remembering how in his previous life he had only fed on wolf meat and knew well how bad predator meat tasted. Jeong began cutting the boar meat with his rusty sword, which, despite its condition, was the only tool available to him at the moment. At that moment, a kind-looking girl approached and apologized for interrupting. When he turned to her, she smiled shyly and explained that she used to run a small restaurant and had some experience in butchering meat. She grew excited when Jeong agreed to let her help, telling her that he would rely on her expertise. Soon, a group of people gathered around them. One person offered to collect wood for a fire, another said they would set up a camp for the night, and others volunteered to search for a nearby water source. However, after gathering some wood, they encountered a problem. They didn't know how to start the fire. At that moment, Jeong opened the Vault of Greed and retrieved an item called the Kasha Ember, a coal infused with the power of a fire spirit. Despite its small size, it contained an unquenchable spiritual energy. Jeong summoned the ember into his hand and told everyone to use it to start the fire. A short while later, the boar meat had been roasted and was ready to eat. Jeong took a piece of it and went off to eat by himself. As soon as he tasted the meat, he noticed the hungry prince licking his lips at the savory smell, causing Jeong to sigh in frustration, thinking that he had a right to enjoy the food too. Just then, Yu approached him with a small container of water and offered it to him. She sat beside him and noticed his sword, asking if he had found it in the forest. Jeong replied that he had been lucky. As he looked at her, he realized she might also need a sword, especially since she was known for her skill with them, and the wooden branch she was carrying was limiting her abilities. Jeong directed Yu's attention to the system window, where she discovered she had 100 points. She asked him what they were for, and he explained that she could use the points to purchase a sword. Yu was surprised and asked him to show her how. Jeong told her to press on her points, and a shop menu appeared. Yu followed his instructions and felt like the process resembled a video game. Jeong reminded her of his earlier advice about the importance of adapting to the system if she wanted to survive. Yu selected one of the swords available in the shop, and she was amazed when the sword materialized out of thin air. She admired the weapon and asked Jeong how he knew all of this. Smiling, Jeong simply said that he had adapted quickly to the situation. Yu laughed and admitted that she thought she had been quick to adapt, but now realized that Jeong was far ahead of her. Jeong was slightly surprised when she called him by name, and she pointed to the leaderboard where Jeong's name appeared in first place. Yu smiled at Jeong and said that a wise person had advised her to pay close attention to the system. She then thanked him for his advice and for teaching her how to use her points. Jeong smiled in return, telling her that there was no need for thanks and that he looked forward to cooperating more with her in the future. As time passed, the players settled down for the night. The next morning, they woke up, and Yu called for them to gather. There was only 1 hour left before the third wave was set to begin, and some of the players grew anxious, wondering what steps to take. Yu gave orders. She instructed one group to gather rocks to throw at the monsters, another group to provide support and protect the others from the rear, while the remaining players were told to find sturdy branches to use as weapons. Jeong watched the situation unfold and felt that things were very different this time. He believed the difference was Yu. Having someone to lead and direct the group had significantly reduced the panic among the players. Jeong thought that this was a good thing, as it would allow him to focus more on himself. Jeong opens the Vault of Greed and retrieves an item called the Blue Mana Circle, a secret training method for mages that has been passed down through generations in the Blue Tower, one of the 7 greatest magical towers. Although the Blue Mana Circle is known to be the least effective among the 7 towers, there are numerous training methods available to enhance it. Jeong decides to start by establishing a foundation using the Blue Towers method, planning to build on it later with more advanced training techniques. In addition to focusing on mana, Jeong also makes sure not to forget the importance of dantian, as mana is essential for magic. While martial arts rely heavily on the dantian, he sits in a meditative position and begins applying the Blue Towers training method to form his mana circle. Controlling his breathing, he concentrates until he feels energy responding from his lungs. Carefully, he attempts to unify this energy with his heart. Only the energy that aligns with him successfully merges, and a window appears, informing him of his success in forming the first mana circle using the Blue Towers method. Now, Jeong is able to gather mana and use magic. The system informs him that the strength and speed of his spells will depend on the level of his mana circle. As forming the first mana circle is considered a significant achievement, Jeong is awarded 1,000 contribution points. Another window appears, telling him that the three sister constellations are watching him with wide eyes, followed by a message that the Heavenly Mother is impressed, as well as the Seer. Jeong notices that many magical entities have taken an interest in him, but he recalls that he already has the support of the Bent Raven and the Hungry Prince. Considering their ranks, he knows that these two rulers are of higher status than the constellations currently showing interest. Just then, another window appears, informing him that the Hungry Prince is irritated by the presence of these unwanted guests. A subsequent window tells Jeong that the Bent Raven is also annoyed and has withdrawn a treasure from the Vault of Greed. At that moment, Kang notices that the constellation windows suddenly disappear, surprising him. A new message informs Jeong that the Bent Raven has blocked all communications from lower-ranked constellations. Jeong is shocked, realizing that even high-ranking entities need considerable effort to interfere with the system in this way. He begins to wonder if the Bent Raven and the Hungry Prince wield so much control that they can prevent other constellations from meddling. Another message appears, stating that the Hungry Prince feels relieved after the troublesome guests have been silenced, and a further message notes that the Bent Raven is watching him calmly. With the situation returning to normal, Jeong decides to continue his mana training. Although the Blue Tower method is known for its lower efficiency, he can still feel the steady growth of his mana circle as his training progresses. At that moment, someone approaches him and asks if he's asleep, interrupting his training. Annoyed by the voice, Jeong opens his eyes to see a figure standing before him. The person explains that they thought he was dead because he had been sitting in the same spot for an hour without moving. Jeong responds calmly, asking if there's something the person wants. The person approaching Jeong is Park, someone Jeong remembers vividly from his past life. Park had been a vile person, bullying the weak and stealing food from the elderly. Now Park seemed to be trying to cozy up to Jeong, likely because of Jeong's newfound strength. Jeong knew that Park was the type to act strong against the weak, but weak against the strong. Park awkwardly tells Jeong that he noticed Jeong didn't have any friends and suggests they become friends. Jeong clearly remembers the bitter experiences he endured because of Park in his previous life, including the time Park forced him to enter the forest under the guise of exploring it. Although that experience led Jeong to discover the powerful guide skill, it had been a miserable event. Jeong responds to Park with an odd question. "Can you run fast?" Park is taken aback and asks why Jeong is asking. Jeong moves closer, placing a hand on Park's shoulder, surprising him, before quietly telling Park that he intends to use him as bait. Time passes, and the third wave begins. Everyone is prepared, holding spears they crafted from tree branches. The monsters of the third wave appear, armed monkeys, wielding various weapons. Yu shouts commands, telling everyone to stay ready and stick to the plan. As the monkeys approach, the players in the front lines use their spears to fend off a few, but the sheer number of the monsters creates rising tension. One of the players asks Yu what they should do now. Yu grows anxious, realizing that their formation is on the verge of collapsing under the pressure of the overwhelming enemy numbers. She wonders if there's any way out of the situation. At that moment, Jeong orders Park to initiate the plan. Park, holding a banana in his hand, nervously asks if Jeong is sure about what he's doing. Frustrated, Jeong pushes Park with his foot, urging him to hurry up. Park falls to the ground and, to his horror, finds two monkeys staring at him hungrily, drooling as they glare at him with savage intensity. Panicking, Park looks up to see a group of ravenous monkeys closing in on him. Terrified, Park starts running as fast as he can, screaming at the top of his lungs while a horde of monkeys chases after him. Jeong smirks, remarking to himself that Park is faster than he expected, thinking he might have taken a few hits during his escape. Park, now desperate, yells at Jeong to save him, saying he can't take it anymore. Jeong coldly responds, telling Park to come toward him. Park shouts back in despair that he's already on his way. At that moment, Jeong opens the Vault of Greed, and a fiery energy surrounds him. He tells Park to dodge what's coming, which shocks Park, who frantically asks what Jeong is planning to do. Jeong retrieves a spell crafted by a skilled mage from the Red Tower. The spell works regardless of the user's mana circle level, but its destructive power depends on the amount of mana used. A blazing fireball forms in Jeong's hand, and he hurls it forcefully toward Park and the monkeys chasing him. Park is stunned as he sees the fiery sphere resembling a meteor heading straight for him. At the last second, he leaps out of the way, narrowly avoiding the fireball. Catching his breath, he shakily asks Jeong what that was, wondering if it was magic. Everyone else is equally astonished by what they've just witnessed, questioning whether they too might be able to perform such feats. Jeong decides to leave the remaining monsters for the other players, giving them a chance to gain experience. Afterward, he uses the authority of gluttony on the corpses of the monkeys, gaining 3 points in agility, though it gradually decreases to 3/10. A notification appears, informing him that the hungry prince is completely satisfied with the perfectly cooked feast. Suddenly, Park kneels before Jeong and swears to serve him with his life from now on. Jeong smiles and responds, "If that's the case, please continue taking good care of me." Park is overjoyed and promises to do anything Jeong asks, urging him to just say the word. Jeong replies, "That's good. You can eat the banana now because you'll be doing a lot of running in the next round as well." Sometime later, deep in the forest, Jeong encounters a group of wild boars digging in the ground. They charge at him the moment they see him, but after taking them down, Jeong levels up to level 3. He's surprised by this, as he had expected to reach the next level only after the 5th wave, and wonders if it's due to the power of the authority of gluttony. At that moment, a message from the system informs him that the 3rd wave has ended, and all players have received 50 points as a reward. Jeong feels relieved knowing they succeeded, though he had taken down a large number of the monsters himself. He hadn't expected the others to finish off the remaining creatures so quickly. Looking at the leaderboard, he notices that Yu has moved up to 2nd place, surpassing Kang. Jeong believes this is due to the sword Yu acquired. Even though it was inexpensive, it clearly made a difference. Just then, a massive and enraged boar approaches Jeong. Turning to face it, Jeong calmly says, "So, you finally decided to show yourself." The boar lets out a powerful roar, recognized as the Abos monster of the Boar Hill region. Jeong opens the Vault of Greed and retrieves a sharpness enchantment, developed in the colorless tower. This enchantment uses mana to enhance the sharpness of blades. Jeong imbues his sword with the enchantment, deciding to end the battle quickly since he doesn't have time for delays. The boar charges at Jeong, and he prepares to meet it head-on, channeling all his energy into his now sharpened sword. With a single enhanced strike, Jeong takes the boar down, earning 500 contribution points and receiving the giant boar's tusk. As a reward, Jeong examines the tusk curiously. Unlike the gray wolf pelt he had received earlier, this time he obtained a raw material that would need to be processed before it could be used. He decides to store the tusk for the time being. At that moment, Jeong is startled by a sudden bright light emanating from one of the holes the boars had dug. The light takes the form of an item called the Chosen One's Tool, a D-grade item used for refining swords. Jeong picks up the tool and wonders if this was what the boars were trying to find. Feeling a connection between the tool and his sword, he decides to explore its potential use later. Back at the players' camp, the others are busy tending to the wounded and gathering the corpses of the monsters they killed. Jeong finds a suitable spot and pulls out the sword and the refining tool he obtained. He opens the Vault of Greed once more and retrieves an item called the Black Rock Grinding Primer, a secret passed down to beginner dwarves in the Black Rock tribe, known for their exceptional craftsmanship skills. Jeong begins refining his sword using the tool and the primer he obtained, despite it being his first time attempting to forge a sword. As he becomes engrossed in the process, an elderly man approaches, expressing admiration for what Jeong is doing. Turning to face him, Jeong listens as the old man comments that most people use machines to polish swords these days, and that it's rare to see someone working by hand. Jeong asks if the old man has experience in the craft, and the man replies that he's been in the trade for decades. He examines the polishing stone and is impressed by its excellent condition, asking Jeong where he found such a high-quality stone in the wild. Jeong replies that he found it by chance and asks if the old man wouldn't mind helping him refine the sword. The old man laughs, saying he'd be happy to help. After inspecting the sword, he notes that despite the rust, it's of high quality. Jeong watches the old man work with great skill and experience, noticing how adept he is at polishing swords. After some time, the old man finishes polishing the sword and expresses joy, saying it's been a long time since he focused on a task like this. He hands the sword back to Jeong, who is astonished by the transformation. Jeong swings the sword and is surprised by how much lighter and more flexible it feels. Checking the system window, he sees that the sword's E grade has risen to D+, and its abilities have changed as well. The first new ability is Expert's Touch, which increases the sharpness of the sword by 20%. The second ability, Hero's Mark, now boosts attack power by 15%, up from 10%. Jeong praises the old man, expressing his admiration for the result. The old man chuckles and says, "Despite its simplicity, the sword is the most sensitive tool among what you possess." Jeong then asks if the old man could take care of his other equipment as well, noting that they could be even more useful if polished properly. At that moment, a system message appears, informing Jeong that the Constellation Golden Crown Soldier is interested in the player Go Chang. Jeong is shocked to see this message because he knows that the Golden Crown Soldier is none other than Paris, the 28th demon lord of the 72 lords of hell, associated with the 7 deadly sins. Despite being known for his obsession with battles, Paris is highly skilled in alchemy and capable of turning metals into gold. His expertise with iron rivals the legendary Hephaestus of Olympus, though Paris focuses more on destructive power, while Hephaestus values balance. The weapons Paris forges are coveted even by the rulers. Jeong is stunned that the old man has attracted the attention of such a powerful constellation like Paris. As the old man looks at the system window, confused, Jeong explains that he has caught the eye of a high-ranking constellation. The old man, even more puzzled, asks what that means. Jeong explains that constellations are higher entities that reside on the upper floors of the tower. The old man, puzzled, asks why such a great entity would take interest in someone as simple as him, and he questions how Jeong knows all this. Jeong explains that he, too, had caught the attention of a constellation earlier. The old man grows a bit uneasy, asking if that means he will be required to perform certain tasks. Jeong reassures him that not all constellations are harmful, and that gaining the interest of one can be highly beneficial. Curious, the old man asks what kind of benefits he could expect, and Jeong smiles, telling him that the fireball he unleashed in the previous battle was thanks to one of the constellations. The old man, intrigued, grows excited at the thought. At that moment, Jeong extends his hand and asks the old man to continue taking care of his equipment. The old man shakes Jeong's hand with a smile, saying, "Don't worry. I'm far more confident in my ability to maintain equipment than I am at swinging a stick at monsters." Jeong smiles to himself, realizing that having a skilled craftsman like the old man on his side is a huge asset. It means he won't have to worry about equipment issues in the future. Afterward, Jeong opens the Vault of Greed and acquires the 3 Talents technique, a training method for unlocking the dantian. Jeong begins meditating, thinking to himself that since he has already formed his mana circle, it's now time to open his dantian. The mana circle is located in the heart, but the dantian is unlocked in the lower abdomen. After intense concentration and using the 3 Talents technique, Jeong successfully unlocks his dantian. The system informs him that he can now use internal energy, which will enhance the efficiency of his martial arts the more it grows. Jeong receives 1,000 contribution points as a reward for this achievement. When he opens his eyes, he realizes that only an hour remains before the next wave of monsters. At that moment, Jeong is surprised when the old man approaches, holding a dagger and smiling as he offers it to Jeong. Jeong is amazed by how quickly the old man had completed the task and thanks him. The old man remarks that the result could have been even better if he had the right equipment and asks Jeong to inspect the dagger and share his thoughts. And the tusk itself has been refined into a D+ grade dagger. The old man asks if Jeong is satisfied with the dagger. Jeong smiles and says it's incredible, admitting he never thought he'd obtain such a high-grade item without proper tools. Jeong praises the old man's skill, noting that it's no surprise someone who caught the attention of Paris would be this talented. The old man had even crafted a sheath for the dagger, and Jeong places the weapon in it, thanking him for his work. Jeong tells the old man that he believes it would be best if he stayed out of direct combat and focused on managing the camp's equipment. The old man agrees, saying he doesn't mind at all. Jeong adds that this would benefit everyone, especially since the upcoming wave would be intense. As time passes, the 4th wave approaches. Yu shouts for everyone to prepare, reminding them, based on Jeong's warning, that this wave would be particularly dangerous. However, many players don't seem to take her seriously, chatting and distracted by side conversations. Yu grows increasingly nervous, noticing their overconfidence, and is certain the wave won't be easy if Jeong had warned them. Suddenly, everyone hears a loud crashing sound. When Yu looks over, She sees that Kang has slammed his fist into the ground with tremendous force. With a sharp look, he orders everyone to be quiet, causing them all to tense up and feel a deep sense of fear. Yu resumes speaking, informing them that there's only 1 minute left and that they need to be ready. She thanks Kang for his intervention, but he turns his head away and sighs without saying a word. The fourth wave begins, and the monsters start to appear. The players are surprised to see that the wave consists of wolves once again, and they think it will be easy. However, their confidence fades as the wolves approach, and they realize these wolves are far larger than before. Park, feeling scared, asks Jeong if this is normal. Jeong coldly responds by asking if Park expected to face sheep. Jeong glances at the players' anxious faces, recalling how he used to be just like them when facing large beasts. However, he notices that Kang and Yu stand out, thinking that they are completely different from the others. Jeong tells Park to stop talking and start hunting. Park, visibly nervous, replies, "Okay," though he clearly feels uneasy. When Jeong asks if he has any objections, Park, trembling, quickly complies while on the verge of tears. Park rushes off, leading a large pack of gray wolves behind him, screaming to Jeong for help, claiming the situation is far too dangerous this time. Jeong, remaining cold, tells Park to stop exaggerating as he prepares his fire attack. Jeong launches the fire attack at Park and the wolves chasing him. Park, startled, yells out, saying that Jeong didn't even warn him this time. The fire attack hits several gray wolves, and a system window informs Jeong that the hungry prince grabbed his utensils quickly, watching the meal as it cooked. Some of the gray wolves manage to dodge Jeong's attack, so he draws his sword and declares that he'll fight them on their terms. Jeong opens the Vault of Greed and retrieves the Blood Wolf Sword art. He charges forward with incredible speed and strikes using the first formation of the sword art, Wolf Claw, swiftly taking down one of the wolves. As he taps into his internal energy and opens his dantian, Jeong feels the power of his martial arts intensify. The system informs him that all his physical abilities have increased with the use of his internal energy, and the One Blood Wolf Sword art has been significantly enhanced. Jeong appears completely different, moving at astonishing speed toward the attacking wolves, eliminating them all in mere moments. Park, extremely shaken, asks if Jeong is the same person he used to know. Jeong coldly responds, "Stop acting dumb." He then uses the authority of gluttony on the gray wolf corpses, gaining 1 point in strength and 3 points in agility, though they quickly decrease to 1/10 and 3/10. A system window appears, informing Jeong that the hungry prince Gend is very pleased with the feast. Park approaches Jeong, asking what he thinks about not helping the other players, pointing out their struggles. Jeong glances at the players who are struggling against the monsters. Even Yu and Kang seem exhausted. Kang is having difficulty keeping up with the speed of the massive wolves, and Yu looks fatigued despite her best efforts to hold on. As Jeong focuses on Yu, he notices something strange. A window appears, informing him that the Crowned Spider, a high-ranking constellation, is observing Yu's swordsmanship with great interest. Jeong is taken aback, realizing that the Crowned Spider, also known as Baal, is the strongest of the 72 demon lords. While Baal may not be a demonic ruler like the Hungry Prince or the Bent Raven, he is a master swordsman and the leader of the Con 66 Demon Union. Jeong understands that this is the reason why the Crowned Spider is so interested in Yu. At that moment, Yu feels something strange and sees a window appear before her, informing her that the Crowned Spider wishes to test her abilities.
Meanwhile, seeing her fighting with the wolves, Jeong thinks the speed of the swinging sword was incomparable. Even though she held only one sword, it looked as if she was striking with multiple blades at once. That's Baal's power. Is he testing if Yu Seoa is worthy of his power? After that, Seoa kills the whole pack of the wolves, and then suddenly the notification bar comes in which it's written the Constellation, Crowned Spider, raises its front legs in delight. After reading that, Jeong thinks seems Baal is quite pleased. Then suddenly many notification comes one by one in front of his eyes, in which it's written the Tutorial Chapter 1 Adaptation. You have successfully cleared the fourth wave. All participants are awarded 100 points. Calculating personal contribution: first place, Jeong Sewoon 4,920 points. Second place, Yu Seoa 900 points. Third place, Hang Han Chul 580 points. After which Seo suddenly becomes unconscious but Jung stops her from falling down. And while looking at her he smiles and says good job. Meanwhile many people get injured after fighting with the wolves. And out of the frustration and anger they start talking that if only that guy had helped, he just stood watching, not lifting a finger. After that Jung puts Seo down and goes towards them, and while looking at him a guy asks him, what are you trying to do? You didn't even help us. Then Jung tells him to move. After which Jung unlocks the treasure vault of greed. And uses Cure Light, a basic healing spell from the White Tower, which stops bleeding and alleviates pain. After seeing him healing people, a girl asks him that please, can you help over here too? Then he replies, I can't use it too much. And I'll pick out only those WHO are in critical condition. Meanwhile later Jung thinks it's more than enough. It's beyond what I expected. There was no death, and the seriously injured will recover quickly with magic. After that he suddenly notices something and sees Han Chul standing in front of him. Then Jung asks him what's going on. After which he replies, fight me. Then Jung smiles and thinks typical Kong Han Chul. If I want to talk to him, I'll need to break his spirit first. After thinking all that he replies, alright, let's fight. Then Han Chul tells him, pick up your weapon. Use your magic, too. After which Jung replies, no need. And tells him that if you want me to pick up a weapon, then defeat me barehanded first. After listening to him Han Chul angrily replies fine and moves towards him to attack him. Then while looking at Han Chul fighting style, Jung thinks his attacks are powerful, but his defense has openings. After that he kicks on his leg and thinks his hardware is impressive, at least. Then Han Chul tries to punch him but he dodges it. After dodging that punch Jung thinks there's no way I can take on Kong Han Chul barehanded as I am now. After thinking all that he unlocks the treasure vault of greed and uses a fighting style named Tai Chi, a martial art developed in the southern schools of China. Alongside Shaolin Kung Fu, as one of the two major forms of Chinese martial arts. Then Han Chul tries to punch him again but Jung stops his punch by using his bare hand. And after that by using Tai Chi he pushes Han Chul away. After that Han Chul gets up and says it's not over yet. Meanwhile looking at his strength Jung thinks in terms of raw strength. Kong Han Chul is a step ahead, but the secret of Tai Chi isn't about brute force, but about controlling the surrounding energy at will. An attack that relies only on force, in front of Tai Chi will only end up harming the attacker. Meanwhile because of that powerful push given by Jung to Han Chul his shoulder dislocates and falls back towards the tree, and the push was so strong that even the tree also breaks. After which Han Chul looks at his shoulder and tells Jung that I've lost. Then Jung uses his Cure Light ability to heal Han Chul's shoulder. Meanwhile healing his shoulder Jung tells him that there's no need to rush. You're already strong enough. Twice a day, you'll spar with me here. After saying all that Jung moves his hand towards him to pick him up. Then Jung sees a notification in which it's written that the Constellation, old man riding a crocodile, looks down intently at player Kong Han Chul. After reading it Jung thinks the old man on the crocodile Agaras, the second-ranked demon king. Looks like Kong Han Chul has finally caught the attention of a constellation. After that again a notification comes in which it's written that tutorial, Chapter 1 Adaption, the 5th wave begins. Defeats the monster wave and proves your worth. After that everyone gets ready for the next wave. And while looking at their confidence Jung thinks the people's attitudes have shifted a lot. Wolves, boars, monkeys, what's next? After that they see a herd of wild boars coming towards them to attack them. Then while looking at this Seo tells everyone that grip your weapons tight. Meanwhile a guy asks Jung that I'm all set. What are we dealing with? Then Jung replies no, this time you're off the hook. After replying him Jung thinks up until now, I've been holding back. Handling most of the enemies to match the others' skill levels. But it seems I no longer need to. And besides, everyone needs to earn their own contribution points as for Kong Han Chul. After thinking all that he sees Han Chul fighting with the wild boars and while seeing the fighting technique of Han Chul. Jung thinks wow, did you use Tai Chi technique? You've finished your contract with Agares, huh? Your strength has multiplied at this rate. After thinking all that Jung says I don't even need to get involved, DOI. Then the guy standing next to him angrily asks him what? And suddenly changes his tone and again asks Jung where are you going? And tells him that I'll go with you. After which Jung replies no need. And tells him that I'm climbing that rocky mountain over there. Then after looking at the height of the mountain he gets scared and tells him safe travels. I'll guard the camp. Meanwhile, on his way to that mountain, suddenly some wild monkeys attack him, but he kills them by using his sword. After which suddenly the notification starts coming in front of him, in which it's written that through internal energy, the Blood Wolf Sword Technique's second move, Blood Wolf Fang, is enhanced. The Constellation, Hungry Prince, mutters that a barbecue party wasn't enough to fill him up. After reading that, he says, "Don't worry, I'll make sure you're well fed." Then he thinks honestly, dealing with you feels like taking care of a child. Or maybe a hungry pet is more fitting. Don't worry, at the summit, there's something tastier than what you've had so far. Before the regression, I wouldn't have even dared to explore this terrain. But now, it's different. After that, he opens the Vault of Greed and uses the Balaton Cliff's macaque ability, a top predator living among the Rocky Mountains and cliffs. Then after using that ability, he thinks, with this power, there's no way I can't climb. Meanwhile, a few minutes later, while climbing, he thinks, I know where to place my hands, how to handle the wind. The monkey's instincts are flowing through me. Without this strength, I would have fallen long ago. Then suddenly a notification comes in front of him, in which it's written that the Constellation, Hungry Prince, wonders where the food is. In a place like this. After reading it, he says, well, it's about time something showed up. Then later, while looking at a human at that height, the monkeys get shocked. And while noticing that, Jeong thinks seems like they were pretty startled. Well, who'd expect anyone to climb up this far? After that, the monkeys try to attack him, so he falls down from the mountain, but he dodges them by jumping up and suddenly takes out his sword. And protects himself from falling by using his sword. At this moment, he thinks maybe one attempt wasn't enough. After that, he looks at a cave and says that cave looks like it's the path the monkeys use. Well then, let's see, shall I search for a hidden piece? Meanwhile, later, after eliminating the monkeys from the mountain, he reaches the cave. And says, as expected, this cave connects to the summit after all. After which he sees a big white monkey coming towards him to attack him. And while looking at him, he smiles and says, so, you're the leader.
What gonna happen next? To find out, do like, share, and comment if you want the next part as soon as possible. And also help us by giving supers, because your support motivates us a lot to make such type of content. Thanks for watching, sayonara.